Hi everyone. Welcome to episode 6 of the Wellbeing Sessions. I'm Helen Roscoe. So, a little bit of an insight into the Wellbeing Sessions. What inspires me to have these conversations is my underlying passion for yoga and well-being, creativity and nature. They might not all feature at the same time, but there is always some kind of interwoven crossover between these areas within my approach as a creative practitioner. Not only do I explore these areas as a yoga teacher, very much I also explore them as a photographer too. So this episode, I'm being joined by Stella Scordellis. She is a highly acclaimed British photographer turned public speaking mentor, and I'm turning our attention towards photography and motivational speaking, which in many ways covers covers two areas. I'm not doing very well with my motivational speaking right now. I've been working in this area myself for some time as a professional photographer since 2007. And then over the past few years, turning my attention towards being a yoga teacher. And then now presenting these sessions live online. There's a lot of things that we're going to be tuning into tonight during our conversation. So Stella's career in photography spans over 3 decades, which in itself is amazing. She had an award-winning studio in Oxted, SMF Creative Photography, and has gone on to build a fantastic reputation as an expertly skilled photographer within family photography through to corporate portraiture. It will become clear that human connection has been invaluable to Stella throughout her life, as she has formed trusting friendships personally and professionally along the way, which have gone on to open many new avenues for her to explore. And it's through these strong and trusting relationships that she went on to photograph classic and supercars, securing commissions to photograph during the British Grand Prix in 2018 and 19. Stella is driven and passionate. That you will soon realise for yourselves. Her latest challenge has been to overcome her fear of public speaking, and she signed up to be a cruise ship speaker, delivering presentations on her photographic career. After receiving some public speaking mentoring, she has since used the time during lockdown to set up an agency designed to help others overcome their fear of public speaking. But it's not all been plain sailing for Stella, which you will soon realise as she shares her inspirational story about overcoming adversity during the 90s to realise her dreams and put all her fears and doubts to one side by venturing into the unknown. If you would like to contribute to our conversation, you can do so but you will need to have a YouTube account in order to do that. So without further ado, and me making any more mistakes with my public speaking attempts, we're going to welcome Stella onto the chat. Hi, Stella.
Hello, Helen. That was a lovely introduction.
Thank you. I did feel I got really stuck with my words, and then I was thinking, this is, the conversation. Then I need some tips. I need some tips from you this evening.
I really need some tips from you as well. You're doing very well. I know this is something new for you too.
Thank you. Thanks, Stella. So how are you doing today? How's your day? How are you this evening?
I'm good this evening, and I've been looking forward to talking to you, Helen, because it's something new for me to be in front of the audience rather than behind. Because as you were saying, I've always been behind a camera. I've been connecting with people in a different way. So for me to be introduced this evening to speak with you and your guests who are watching as well, is a real insight as to how we can overcome our fears and kind of go forward.
Yeah.
And enjoy different experiences. And I just enjoy meeting new people, hearing about how people get on with their lives as well.
I know, and I think that's something that has been quite nice about how we met, because we met through the F22 female photography group, which was not that long into lockdown. It was possibly about a month into lockdown when they started and they had their first session. And it was a Zoom call, and there were about 100 or so photographers on that call. And we were asked if we wanted to kind of say a few words about how we're doing, what we usually would be doing, and how we're feeling. And it was quite an overwhelming experience for us to step up, and I thought, no, I'm going to do this. I'm going to say a few words here. And then you spoke as well, and you kind of said how it was a very unusual time for you to sort of be at this standstill, and went on to talk about how you've gone into public speaking, and it kind of went from there really. But I reached out to you because I was really interested in the transition of maybe, moving from photography to public speaking. But I just wanted to sort of say, like that group at the time, you know, I think I did 3 sessions in total, and hopefully there could be more for us to do. But I found it really inspiring, and it sort of helped me with my confidence in terms of speaking in front of a large group like that. But also, I felt like we were all on a bit of a level playing field. Sort of felt like everyone's, you know, levels of photography, no matter whether you're like agency represented or whether you're independent, whether you're portrait studio or whether you're editorial or landscape, you know, any of that. It felt like we were very much all in the same boat, and it became quite an inclusive group. And I think it was through that I felt I was able to reach out to you, and we sort of formed that human connection sort of straight away. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I agree, because going back to that Zoom presentation, I mean, that is the first time I think I've been on a Zoom call.
Oh, right.
Before that, I wasn't really familiar with Zoom. I've recently got back from speaking on a cruise ship. I got back on the 19th of March, and we went into lockdown a few days later. And I feel that those first few weeks of lockdown, I was kind of in hibernation. So it was really nice to be able to connect with other people, other professional women on the F22 AOP, Association of Photographers forum. And a certain part of me got a little bit intimidated. Here we were, you know, up to 50 or 60 people, or maybe 100 or more. And we were all asked to kind of speak about our experiences, about our work, and how we felt that our livelihoods had stopped, so to speak. We weren't able to work. And we were reaching out to each other. And I think it was a fantastic opportunity, because I was meeting people who are like yourself. You're based up north, I'm in the south. We were reaching out to people and having that ability. And also we were asked to speak. And I thought, why am I nervous about speaking? I've just come back from talking to hundreds of people on a cruise ship. I did 7 different presentations on the sea days, which the sea days turned out to be longer because we had to leave the Caribbean and come back to Southampton sooner than expected. So I was used to standing up. I learned to be used to standing in front of an audience and to be able to deliver something that I had prepared. And here I was in a Zoom meeting, and then I kind of put my hand up virtually and said that I'll speak. And then my heart was beating so much. I thought, no, you've got to speak. You want to create a way of sharing what you had learned with other people. And I thought by speaking and speaking up on this particular occasion, I could actually say out loud, I was about to start an agency to teach others the art of public speaking. And I wanted people to benefit from the way I learned from my good friend Helen, who's a highly acclaimed public speaker. And she spent a lot of time with me before and helped me overcome my fear. And I spoke with her in that Zoom meeting, and I said, this is what I'm going to do. I actually said I'm going to do it, so I have to do it. So that brings us very fast forward into today, when I've launched the website I've been working on about the public speaking for the agency called the Toucan Agency.
Yeah.
So that kind of brings us to present day, but that is kind of a brief synopsis about lockdown and where we are now.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously times have changed quite a lot now since where we were then.
Yes.
There was a lot of anxiety in the group, wasn't there? And, you know, a lot of us were very unclear or, you know, worried, or, I mean, we still are to an extent. You know, the industry is very slow picking up. But I think it's useful to have these additional tools that we work with. You know, how you've taken the time now to launch your public speaking agency. And like myself, I've been able to just continue with the wellbeing and the yoga side that usually is working alongside my life as a photographer. I think it's a good time to let yourself be adaptable and versatile to the situation, and find ways, you know, in what other ways can you use your talents, because we're all so talented, and there are so many fruits to bear, you know. But let's just go back a little bit.
Yeah.
Gone straight into public speaking, which is very in the now for you. But I'd like us to just kind of backtrack, because there's a really inspirational story of your life, really, in terms of having gone through becoming a professional photographer, to opening your own studio, and yeah, the sort of path that ended up happening for you, to why then maybe we've had fears over public speaking as well. You know, it's kind of all interwoven. But could you maybe just share a little bit about your life as a female photographer since the 90s, and Shall we show your show reel now? Should we just go straight into that?
We can do. We can do. I'm happy to do that. But when you was just saying the 90s, when I think about it, I started probably before the 90s when I was
Okay.
a girl in a portrait studio.
Yeah.
And that was kind of my inspiration, and that was in the 70s there. I said.
Oh, right. Wow. Okay. Yeah.
And I would work as a Saturday girl as a receptionist, and I was working for a female portrait photographer
Right.
in Busy High Street in Croydon. And they took me on as an apprentice when I was 17 in their commercial studio.
Okay.
I also did a day release at Croydon Art College. So that was really kind of going back to the darkroom stuff that was very varied.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I learned all the skills from answering the phone, washing up, sweeping the floors, developing the film, processing everything. So it was very hands-on, and I really enjoyed doing that. And I knew one day I wanted to own my own studio. So that's kind of going back to them. But then fast forward a little bit more, I was kind of distracted. I met a man that I went on to marry, and we went into a restaurant business. And then I kind of forgot about my desires to be a photographer.
Okay.
And soon after that, I went on to have children. And then the happy ever after with the children, and the marriage didn't work out. So I was left in a situation where I had to generate my own money. So I thought, right, this is the cue I've been waiting for. It's not what I wanted. It was a huge adversity because we were in a position where we didn't have money, we didn't have a home, we were housed in council accommodation and put on benefits very quickly. And my children at that stage were, how old were they at the time? They must have been about 1, 7 and 8. So by that time I decided, right, this is the time I've got to think about starting a studio. And that's kind of how it went. But should we have a look at the show reel now? We can just talk about that a little bit later as well.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go into it.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of going back to the commission. I can speak over it, but this is going back to a commission I had when I was working on the QE2. This is in the late 90s. When I was working with a fellow photographer, and we were flown over to Sydney to photograph the QE2, part of the Royal Cruise, arriving at Sydney Harbour, which was beautiful. And then we went around to various different ports, but that was a really nice commission. Once I opened the studio, I met interesting people that took me to different places.
Yeah.
So just moving on, I think there's a few more pictures coming after that. I think we've been a little bit stuck on that particular picture. We're moving on to another one.
Yeah.
Another commission. This is also in the late 90s, where I was working with a fellow photographer as well. This was when we were working on the behind the scenes book about the Knightsbridge Store Harrods. And this, you probably can't tell from the people in that carriage, but that is actually Boy's Own, who actually opened the store on one of them. And Harrods stores, they used to have huge openings where people would queue up for days for bargains, and Boy's Own were the people who were actually opening up the sale that particular day. But
That's amazing.
I remember it was so strange. We were kind of running after them and running behind them, trying to photograph them for this particular limited edition book we were doing about Harrods behind the scenes. So that was kind of in the early days of opening the studio, that I was kind of thrown into this other world through meeting a fellow photographer.
Yeah.
And kind of working as his co-photographer and his organizer, to be able to create a behind-the-scenes book about the World Cruise and the QE2.
Okay.
And so this particular occasion on the Harrods sales as well. We kind of worked with Harrods and this as well.
Okay. Did they come about through owning the studio then, those commissions?
Yeah, that came out through opening the studio. About 3 weeks after I opened the studio, I met a fellow photographer who asked me to kind of work with him on those particular occasions.
Right.
But I think we'll forward on to a few more pictures that I'll tell a little bit more of the story when I opened the studio in 1997. Now, this particular picture, the one on the right, is of a mother and her baby. I photographed a lot of local people who I still photograph and still kind of connect with. But this was on the right, her baby when she was 7 months old, and then again when she was 17 years old. So it was really nice to be able to kind of recreate that scene. So this is kind of a nice example of the connections that I made.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a very good example of how trusting you are as someone kind of working with you. The fact that you've maintained these relationships, and because as well, when you have a studio on a high street and people can you're visible, aren't you? And you're like the go-to studio in that area. But the fact that you're there over a
Yeah.
long period of time, you know, and those people really trusted you. And, you know, I think it's lovely to be able to do that. You photograph mother and baby, and then you do it again 17 years later. I mean, that's just a beautiful gift to be able
And
to
also,
offer people.
and it does evolve now, but I'm getting so old that I'm now photographing their weddings. Um, I don't photograph so many weddings now. In the early days, I was photographing about 40 weddings a year, and that was in the days of loading 12 exposures into the magazine of a Hasselblad, and then having my assistant reload them for me, and then taking the films for processing. So those were different days when I started out.
Yeah.
It was all film processing. The picture on the right-hand side was from 35mm negative.
Okay.
And on the left, it was the digital.
Right.
I kind of got into digital in about 2000, 2002. I was leaving the Hasselblad behind and thinking I'm actually going to kind of convert to digital,
Right.
which changed the way I worked and created far more revenue in the sense that we didn't have to take films for processing. We could be far more free in the way we photographed as well. So that was just a nice revolution to go through, to be able to witness that. Now, these lovely children that we've just seen, those lovely, gorgeous children, belong to Fiona, who worked with me for many years as my post-production assistant and co-photographer at weddings as well. But we're just kind of scrolling through a variety of different pictures that have evolved over time. There was a lovely picture we passed of a lovely husband and wife who have been coming to me since the beginning.
Oh.
And then as time rolled by, I did meet lots of people through the studio. And as we're seeing these cars in front of somebody's house, I was commissioned, in this car as well, I was commissioned by a local gentleman, or rather by his wife, to photograph his classical supercar collection. And the idea was to produce a limited edition book to celebrate his 60th birthday. So going on to other connections as well, one of my other customers worked within Sky Sports, and there was an opportunity to photograph from the 2018 Formula One team. And this one here was from the 2019 behind the scenes when I was working. Firstly, in 2018, I was working behind the scenes with the Williams team, and I was photographing their young Russian motor racing driver, Sergei Sorokin. And I was commissioned by a Russian magazine to be able to photograph what's actually involved in the life of a racing driver. It was a real revelation to me because I didn't realise how precise everything was to the split seconds and how focused and dedicated they are as athletes. And it was a real pleasure to be able to get out of the studio for a little bit.
Yeah.
And just unite with different people, and also to be able to be a fly on the wall. And I've always got this deep fascination to learn about different subjects and to learn about different lives, and also to be kind of in a world which I've watched on the TV, and now I was actually a part of it, and to be standing next to Lewis Hamilton and all the other greats out there in the world of Formula One. But that was a fantastic experience, and more of that can be seen on my website, stellascordellis.com, which was kind of the second part of how my business evolved from being the high street studio.
Yeah.
The studio started, it was called, as you mentioned earlier, and it still is called SMS Creative Photography, and it was on the high street in Oxford for 23 years, from February 97 until August 2019, where I moved out. I made the decision to move out, relocate to home, and just have more freedom to pursue more stuff like the Formula One stuff, and more lovely stuff. And I still connected with people that came in. Like I had somebody here today who wanted to come in and have some work done, so he came to my house. It gave me the freedom to be able to be a little bit more versatile and explore the world a little bit more. And also the Formula One picture was really the catalyst for the public speaking, because it was through that I got a commission through an agency to speak on the cruise ships. And this particular picture here is of me overcoming my fear of public speaking. And I gave a talk, first of all, about me and my life, is what I'm talking about now. And that was the front of the studio that I mentioned that was in Oxford. That's how it first looked when I opened it in 1997. And it did kind of go through a change. If you have a look at the website, smscreativephotograhy.co.uk. And then the second talk I gave about on one of the cruise ships was about the Formula One work that I did. And I gave a 45-minute talk about the history of Formula One and also working with the Williams team. So I had to not only be a photographer, I learned to be a researcher, I learned to be a storyteller in words and visually, and I learned also how to present. And that was really the skill I learned with my friend Helen, was how to put that all together to create an engaging 45 minutes where you can educate people, enlighten them, and keep their attention, which was kind of so important, because once you're on a cruise ship and you're kind of you've got people that are there wanting to learn, they can very easily walk away if they want to, but you've got to be somebody who can educate them, I suppose, and entertain them. And also, a lot of the people in the audience probably knew far more than me about Formula One. There were a lot of gentlemen there who were avid Formula One followers. So I did a lot of research to be able to follow the pictures that I'd taken and to be able to carry that through.
Great. No, that's fantastic. It's really nice to see how your career has sort of evolved. I'm just going to sort of go back into the photography before we fully move to the public speaking part of the conversation. But what is it that you love most about being a photographer?
I think it's my inquisitive mind that I really love meeting people, and I really like connecting with them. Like when I first started and I photographed children predominantly, it was just photographing that moment in time that can never, ever be repeated, especially with young children and the fact they're so spontaneous. And once you've got that connection and you've created a moment, I know that a lot of my clients that I still speak to now have got those pictures from like 20 years ago that are still on their walls. And they say to me, we've still got that picture on our walls, or I go into their house for some other reason and those pictures are there. And I think what I love about it also is that I'm constantly learning, I'm constantly evolving in my ability as a photographer and also my knowledge about people. And I think as I've kind of matured and aged with photography, I've found the connection much, much deeper than that, and it's become far more intuitive and spontaneous, so to speak. So it's not just the technical side of it. I think it's also the fact that I want to give the people that are coming to me something that they'll remember forever. It's almost like it's almost a legacy to kind of share with future generations. And I think I kind of had a strap line a few years ago, and it's to capture the present to create the past for future generations. And I think that really does kind of sum it up. You know, we want to have those days where we can still rummage through those suitcases of our history and of our ancestors. I'm not sure we'll still have the suitcases to rummage through. I think it's going to be computers or variety, or maybe it'll be Instagram that we're rummaging through, or our personal accounts. And I think it's really kind of, I'm really happy that I've been able to kind of be part of that history, and I haven't missed it. I didn't arrive like 10 years too late or too early. And I've been part of that transition period, and I'm able to share that with other people as well.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think it's so nice to be able to, like you say, sort of capture that real moment, and for people to have that real moment then, like you say, packed away in their suitcase or their digital photo albums. But it's a lovely gift to be able to offer people, is to sort of photograph loving relationships and human connection. I think it's an area that we both share when it comes to photography and our approaches to working with people. How we both really love to enjoy photographing that authentic moment, and kind of capturing the real, and telling the story. You know, storytelling plays a really big part. So let's then start moving towards public speaking. And you closed your studio last year, and then you kind of was it Helen who was doing it, or was somebody else doing the cruise ship speaking, and you thought, I quite like to have a go at that?
Yeah, let me tell you a little bit about that. Helen's been doing public speaking now for a number of years, and I've always been curious, and I've always admired her because she's so confident on the stage. She can command an audience, and I've always admired anybody who can stand up and speak, and that has always terrified me. I've always felt so tongue-tied, petrified, but I thought, I like a challenge, or otherwise I'm a glutton for punishment, one or the other. I thought I'd really like to overcome that, and I'd like to try and evolve as a person. I don't want to stand still. I always want a new challenge. And it was, funnily enough, it was over a Burns night supper that we went to in January last year. And she just got back from a 2 or 3 month cruise over Christmas and New Year, and it sounded absolutely fantastic. And I thought I'd like a little piece of that. And
Yeah.
devised the plan over she was drinking a couple of whiskies. I think I was on water. I'm very easily drunk. So we kind of decided, we kind of hatched a plan. We wrote it all down. And she said, look, if you want to do it, this is my agent's email address. Email her. Tell her you've done Formula One stuff. Tell her you've worked behind the scenes and various other things. And we kind of hatched up a few titles of work that I'd done on different interesting subjects. And I emailed her agent the following day, only to be told, I get an email back almost immediately to say, you sound like a very interesting person, would love to know more. And I thought, oh my goodness, I've actually got the ball rolling, I've got to do something about it. So anyway, to cut a long story short, they did sign me up after I presented to them my Formula One 45-minute presentation. They were fascinated by it. They were fascinated that a woman was talking about a man's world and wanted to get more women onto the cruise ships because it was a male-dominated world with the public speaking. So fast forward, the interview was April last year. Fast forward to March this year, and I had to prepare. Within 6 weeks, I was given 6 weeks' notice that I was going on a cruise from where was it, Barbados off to Cyprus. And I particularly chose this cruise to go on. I kind of pitched for it because I have a Greek Cypriot background. I thought if I do that cruise, we start from Barbados, St. Lucia, St. Kitts, Antigua. We go across the Atlantic for 6 days, and we visit 7 different ports, and then we finish in Cyprus. So I thought I will prepare 7 different presentations and made up the titles and pitched for this particular cruise, and that was in December, only to be told in late January, I love your titles, please can you do it? And I thought, well, I've only got 6 weeks to do 7 titles, and I actually only have one, and I've made most of them up. A couple of them were about my heritage. I thought, well, I can't be found out. I've also decided that I'll talk about the history of Barbados. I visited it and I visited the lovely island of Barbados and had loads of pictures. And I thought I can just talk about my pictures. And we visited Malta. I thought I could talk about my photographs. But the reality, as Helen was training me, is you can't stand on stage and talk about your pictures as if you're talking about your holiday snaps. You now have to research the history of Malta, the history of Barbados. So for 6 weeks solid, I researched so many different things and prepared for 7 different presentations, which had to be done within 45 minutes. You can't go over by a second. You've only got a limited amount of time. And that really was a crash course in how to prepare the presentation. And it was practice, 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 which is the most important thing. And if any of my friends are watching, the ones that actually watch me go over and over and repeat, thank you so much. It paid off.
Yeah, because was it something like Helen said, no, you're just going to bore them if you do that, and
she was very cruel to me.
Yeah.
She said, when I was preparing for my interview and I was talking about Formula One, after I prepared the presentation and gave it to her, she was good because she heard it all, but she said, you know what, if you take that to the interview, after 5 minutes they'll be bored. It sounds like you're talking about your photographs. You're not talking about the history of Formula One. You're not talking about the history of the Williams team. You've got to learn that, and you've got to learn it so that you know. So it sounds like you've known it for a long time. So I did, and that really taught me. It really taught me how to research and how to feel confident and how to know your stuff and how to convey that message and how not to fidget on stage and how to stand and how to feel confident. So if Helen's watching, which hopefully she is, I hope I'm doing all right.
I think you're doing more than all right, Stella. I mean, you actually come across as being quite confident, and I get the impression that you have been a very successful businesswoman in very male-dominated industry.
Sure.
So even I started out as a photographer freelance in 2007, which is fairly recent compared to you experiencing the 70s, 80s, 90s of that industry. And even then, I don't feel like it's been up until the last few years that I've been taken seriously as a female photographer in the industry. And a lot of events, at times I felt like I was looked down upon. Who is this young girl here with her camera?
Yeah.
And then at other times, you rock up and you're surrounded by men who are doing the job alongside you, and you don't feel like they're taking you seriously. And then you just said as well that on the cruise ship that was a male-dominated industry of public speaking as well. So you're a bit of a pioneer when it comes to setting the way for other women to come forward into these industries for sure. I had no idea that the public speaking industry, although it completely makes sense, was so male orientated. Because there's so many women out there with inspirational stories and motivational stories and ways that we can support one another. It's a shame that it isn't celebrated enough. So well done, Stella, because I think it's fantastic that you're doing that now as well.
Thank you. And I think also what I've learned through being in business is that you've just got to follow your common sense. So I didn't, when I first started the studio, I had no business plan. I thought, I don't have any money. I'm living in council accommodation. I'm on benefits. I could just got to kind of bite the bullet and do it. And I think when you're in a situation where you're the sole breadwinner for 3 children and you haven't got anything, you actually have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
So I thought, and I signed a 9-year lease when I went into the studio, and I thought, and I think as a mother you can relate to this, Helen. I think when I signed my 9-year lease, it was like giving birth, and when you're just about to give birth, and you think, this is a terrible idea. What the hell have I done? I had no option but to keep going. And I opened the doors, and it must have been brilliant timing, because when I opened the doors, people came to me and they trusted me to photograph their children and their weddings, and I thought, oh my God, these people trust me, they believe I can do it, so I have to do it. But I had a lot of fear, and I had to overcome that fear. And I remember having come out of a marriage and kind of going through an awful divorce. I was going to people's weddings and having to watch people get married, which I found very, very hard.
Yeah.
But I just thought, no, this is a business. You've got to feed your children. You've got to come off benefits. You want to buy a house. You want to give your children a life. And I thought the only way I'm going to do that is if I do it to fall back on. And there's still no one else to fall back on. Now through the adversity of lockdown, my business has been on hold. I'm thinking, right, let's find another avenue. Let's find another income stream. Let's get this out there. So I'm always up for a challenge. And I just think, they're all opportunities that they're not insurmountable. We can all learn from them, and we can all pass on our wisdom.
Yeah. And thinking about the kind of adversity that you've overcome in life in terms of those, being a single parent, being on benefits, opening that studio. I mean, you were saying that you had fears about public speaking, and I guess to an extent many of us do. It's quite normal, but I think a lot of those fears go back to previous, whether it's childhood, whether it's someone saying to us, you're not good enough, or don't, it's those sorts of things that become ingrained within us that mean that when we are on stage, or even doing these kind of online conversations, or even in a Zoom forum where you're surrounded by loads of supportive women, and you still feel like you can't quite get your voice out because there's something in you that says, oh my, I can't do this, and it's like, so how have you overcome your fears of public speaking then? Is this working closely with Helen in preparation for that interview, and then also then going on stage? What was that like?
I think working with Helen and the fact that she could do it, and I thought if she can do it and other people can do it, why can't I do it? And I thought, and I think it was a deep desire to overcome it. If you don't have a deep desire to overcome it and do it, then it might not necessarily work for you. But the way I did it, I think it was like just jumping and doing it, thinking, right, now you've committed. I think when I say I'm going to do something, and when I say it out loud and people can hear, I then have to do it. And it was the same with the public speaking. I was telling people I'm going to be a speaker, I'm going to do public speaking, I'm going to go on cruises, I'm going to experience a different way of working and living. But I think the way I overcame it, and I think you're constantly overcoming it. I don't think that I still have the fear, but I think you have to just feel the fear and do it anyway. I'm sorry if that sounds corny, but it's true.
I think potentially it's about managing the fear, isn't it? We're all going to be afraid of that, getting on stage and maybe saying the wrong thing, and not being afraid to sort of see the funny side, because we can take ourselves extremely seriously. But it's for me, I think just sort of having now, gone into this lifestyle as a yoga teacher as well, And also because I practice yoga daily, I have a lot of tools that I can draw upon that I know are going to help to calm me in a situation where I might feel stressed or anxious. So I think in many ways it's kind of about how we manage ourselves in those situations, so that perhaps if there's something triggering that's there, we don't let it manifest itself, or we don't let it overcome us and take over to the point where, I think when I was at school, I remember doing a presentation and like I was fine when I got into it, but the first few words I was really stammering, and I couldn't get the sentence out. And then as soon as I did it, it was fine. And you remember those experiences, you remember the kind of really negative experiences, and that was like not even 5 minutes of my life, and yet I can exactly go back to that time and think of how it felt. So it's almost like not trying to let those moments overcome you.
Yes, I can identify with that, because the moment you said about talking at school, I remember at the primary school I was at, we all had to take our place or our turn to speak in assembly and read a verse from the Bible. And I remember that's kind of what sticks with me in my mind. I couldn't sleep for about a week before, thinking I've got to stand up there and speak in front of everybody. And I think it's kind of those childhood fears that I thought, I'm an adult now. Why do I still feel like I'm incapable of doing these things? Why have I still got this fear of not being able to do it? And I think part of me was stuck kind of in that childhood mode. It's the anxiety as well. The anxiety builds up. And I think if I can suffocate the anxiety and lock it in the cupboard and just forget it's there, I might be able to do it. And also what I learned to just concentrate on what I had learned. Whatever I had, practiced and practiced, I thought, don't think about your nerves. Think about, you're going to go out there, you're going to smile, and it's going to flow. I convinced myself that is what is going to happen. And then I remembered my yoga practice of, the breathing, and I know that you're an expert at this, Helen. Is it Ujjayi?
Ujjayi breathing.
Ujjayi breathing. And I thought, as I was about to go on stage for the first time, I thought, I've got to do this, because everyone, there's kind of a lot of hype about someone who's going to be speaking. There was a lot of hype about me because I was a new speaker.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm going to go on. How am I going to do it without being a gibbering wreck? So I went into I had quite a bit of rescue remedy. That's a useful tool, rescue remedy. And then I started doing the breathing, which was like breathing at the back of your throat with your mouth closed, the Ujjayi breathing. And that really, I can recommend it for me. It just calmed my mind instantly, because all I was thinking about was my breathing. And then I went out on stage very confident, and I had a few people, a couple of the other speakers knew that this was, I was very nervous and I was practicing. And they came up to me afterwards and said, that was absolutely fantastic. Are you sure that this is your first attempt at speaking? You think that you're a plant and that you're here to check everybody else, and really you're just testing us. And I felt like I was on that program called Faking It, where you're in one profession and then you're taught very quickly how to be within another profession to fool others. So I mean, it's all hats off to Helen, really, that she trained me in such a way to have that self-belief. And also, I must say, it did occupy my mind for a very long time.
Yeah, I mean,
and also, I did feel triumphant once I had completed it, because we had to return from the cruise. We left for the cruise on the 5th of March. We left Antigua on the 8th of March, and then obviously everything was shutting down. So we were then now 12 days at sea, coming back to Southampton. And so I kind of did one after the other of the talks. So there was very little time in between. But I think once I did them, I had that lovely feeling of euphoria, thinking, oh my God, I have actually done it.
Yeah.
And actually doing this isn't something I would have been confident doing before at all. I would have thought, no, I'm so shy, I won't do it. Or I'll do it, but it might show that I'm shy. But I've learned to kind of enjoy it. And I just think we're all human beings. We're infallible. We aren't expected to be machines. We aren't expected to be automatic in our approach. And I think that's what makes us all unique and presentable, and the way we are. And I hope that I can inspire others to be able to use our agency and our skills. Where Helen will be teaching, I'll be supporting her, and we're also available to do our public speaking for others if they want to sign us up to speak at their event or their cruises or whatever it may be. But the new website that was launched today, the toucanagency.com, is ready for you to view, and to please do make your comments, and please do follow the Instagram accounts as well.
Yeah, I had a little look on it earlier today. It looks
Thank
great.
you.
You've got some really nice tips on there as well, about engaging, delivery, preparation, practicing. So there's some really useful advice on there. I was going to say about, the experience of being a photographer and how, for me, I mean, I've gone through quite a lot of stages in being a photographer, and then sort of getting to a point where I felt like I can walk onto a set and I feel very confident in myself. And there's a transformation that occurs. It doesn't just happen overnight. And then I think that's helped me with being a yoga teacher and sort of almost being on the spot, being surrounded by people and helping, directing people. Like you do that in photography, you're directing people in order to capture them, especially within portraiture. And then, working with people physically with their bodies through yoga. And then I started doing workshops. I launched a retreat, and I've just gradually sort of found the confidence grows, like you say, over time, because each time you do something, you do have that feeling of euphoria and pride, and you feel, oh, okay, I can do the next thing now. I kind of feel equipped enough to do this. But it's similar to me kind of doing these presentations, it's like the kind of nerves that I go through, and then I have them, and I'm really excited by them because, they're really, really meaningful chats, and they've actually, I feel like I've grown in confidence by having these online exchanges with people, especially during lockdown when, perhaps maybe it might not have been a very confident time at all, but I feel like I've been able to just sort of connect with people in a different way. And it's a great feeling when you do something that, and then everyone says, oh, is that your first one? It's like, oh yeah, thanks. Sometimes you've got to take it. Sometimes you just got to take that pat on the back and celebrate it as well, because I'm quite shy when it comes to celebrating myself. I try not to put too much out there about myself all the time, because I'm like, oh, what if they think this? What if they think that? And then I spoke to a friend recently, and she was like, well, who cares?
And I think nowadays we are in a society, especially with social media, where it is acceptable to kind of say what you're doing.
Yeah.
But I think as photographers, and we're confident behind our cameras, we're confident when we're in that professional mode. And I think a lot of photographers that I've spoken to do feel uncomfortable with the self-promotion.
Yeah.
I think it's something that you've got to use. It's a business tool. It's a mechanism that we use to put ourselves out there. Times are changing. Gone are the days where you can. I know I did have a shop front. Gone are the days when you have a shop front to kind of shout about yourself, or you're in an environment. We're all kind of a little bit hidden now, so we do need to use those social media platforms.
Yeah, and I was going to say, Stella, like the fact that you were a very successful high street agency, and then now on Instagram you've got over 20,000 followers. It's kind of transferred over into the digital marketing platform for you.
Yes, that's strange. It's a different way of thinking, but also what I love is on the social media, all the different people I'm meeting from different worlds all over the world in different professions, and we can just find out about each other. Whereas before, when people were very close before, we just kind of knew about our immediate vicinity. And I think now the world is opening up even more. I think what lockdown has brought us is a much broader connection with others.
Yeah.
Like I don't think I would have been doing this before, but I'm hopefully connecting with people far and wide. And I think with the Zoom meetings that we do, and that I have done, I've connected and also told people about me. They've told me about themselves, and I found out things that I didn't know were out there. So I just think the social media platform for selling our services and putting ourselves out there is an essential part of being in business nowadays.
Yeah.
I think otherwise you're invisible. If people don't know what you're doing, they're never going to come to you. I know word of mouth is a wonderful thing, but word of mouth is now the world of social media.
Yeah. You heard it here. Okay. So we've got about 15 minutes left, Stella. The conversation is flying by. Maybe you could just offer some tips for people then who are like, people are going to come to you because they might want to prepare for maybe an interview, or they might want to prepare for presenting something like this, or they might want to present a webinar. or it could be on stage. You know, there's so many different reasons why people might come to you. How can you help them to kind of overcome their fears? Like what are you hoping to sort of offer people through
Well,
the
I
two
think
teenagers?
what we're offering, and it is predominantly Helen who is going to be doing the teaching, because I'm very new at this particular skill, and I want people to see that you can overcome it, and I'm living proof of that. But I think everybody is an individual. There's no real set formula where we kind of work through a program, so to speak. But Helen is an accomplished artist. She's a caricature artist, and she uses that skill within her public speaking and teaching. And when she's teaching people, she does use kind of diagrams. It depends on the person. Some people are happy to learn through diagrams. They're happy to learn through speaking. They're happy to learn through different ways. And as I say, it is kind of instilling in somebody or getting them to verbalise what it is they're uncomfortable with. And I think once they've actually been able to find the words to say it, that's kind of the start of the process. And I think a lot, I mean, it's anything from like the best man speech to pitching on Dragon's Den or trying to go for an interview for a new job.
Yeah.
Or just on a Zoom meeting, I met a teacher recently who said, you know, I'm a classroom teacher, but now I'm a presenter. I'm having to learn presenting skills for video teaching because it is so different to hold children's attention. And it's so many different things. I don't think I can say in like a sentence or two how it is taught, because everybody is different.
Yeah.
I think initially it is having faith that if you want to be able to overcome it, you can. You have to have that self-belief to start with. If you think, I'm rubbish, I'm never going to do it, I think that negative self-talk is going to kind of get in your way. So I think it's got to be the positive outlook first of all.
And it could be that, you know, a yoga practice or a therapist or some kind of holistic or nurturing approach that goes alongside it would help people with that mindset.
Yeah.
People are struggling to kind of get into that positive mindset. Then, you know, practices like mindfulness, nature, you know, being outdoors in nature, or seeing a counsellor could really help them alongside that. So, I mean, it very much sounds like it's a bit of a coaching kind of relationship. And I've done similar exercises with one of my close friends who's a coach. And recently she got me to draw out a desired outcome. And it was quite tricky, really, thinking about what that desired outcome might be when you draw it out. But I think drawing things sometimes enables you to then get the words of what it is that you're trying to say. And then if you change your position in relation to that drawing, you see it in different angles. And there's loads of lovely creative ways of being able to work with people in order for them to unlock, you know, whatever it is that maybe they're holding on to.
Yeah, and also I think it's a part of it is actually doing the presentation, how you think a presentation should be, and then going through the correction process. So that's how I started. I thought this is, as I mentioned earlier, this is fantastic if you just talk. But then it's not just how you're saying it, it's the tone of your voice. It's remembering to stop. I remember when I first spoke, I spoke so quickly because I was so enthusiastic. But I learned that it's the pauses as well, it's the silence and the stopping that is allowing the people that you're talking to the space and time to absorb what you've said to them. No one really wants to be bombarded with too many facts. They want to have the information, and they want to be able to relate to it as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of part of the teaching is it's the flow of the words, and it's the words that you use, the language that you use is very important too. So that's all part of the training and the teaching. But I think it can benefit any area of your life. I think if you're feeling insecure, vulnerable, and all those things that can hold you back, if you can learn different techniques to overcome that, then I think it will benefit. Well, I know from personal experience, it can benefit every area of your life.
Yeah.
So I think with the public speaking, it's a different skill. I mean, as a photographer, I have the skill of commanding people when I'm behind a camera. I can command large groups of people to stand in different ways. I can command, you know, different areas of my life as well. But it's just the public speaking thing where I feel that I'm going to be judged and not say the right things.
Yeah.
That kind of put the fear into me. But I think once that you can grasp hold of that fear and understand it, and also I think what the reward is that feeling of pride and euphoria, and that is better than, you know, lots of other things that I've experienced. And I think as life has gone on, I'm realising that you've got to grasp opportunities and make them work for you. And so if any adversity comes my way, I kind of change it into a positive very quickly, especially with the lockdown situation. My photography work, I had lots of stuff kind of lined up, and that just kind of stopped, and hopefully that will start picking up as it is now. I didn't want to be left in a situation where, as photographers, we were discussing this on our forum, is there another way that we'd like to experience different parts of our lives to take us into different areas and different worlds? And I'm kind of excited for the future as to how we can help others and where my life will go as well. I feel like a new beginning in relation to my photography and the public speaking as well. And having met you, Helen, I've never met you in the flesh. I've only ever met you via Zoom. I don't know how tall you are, which is odd when you're talking to people. When you're meeting people as a photographer, immediately you get an impression of who they are, how tall they are, how
yeah.
And that is something that you're portraying instinctively.
Yeah.
And now we're learning different skills. We're learning how to communicate with people in a two-dimensional way.
Yeah.
And I'm getting used to it. And also for me, I've got ready and I've come down and sat in my kitchen, which I've made myself, like a little studio. And I thought, I haven't had to travel anywhere. This is a different way of engaging. And also I haven't been out in the evening since February. I haven't been out. And I just think I'm just now in kind of this mode of thinking this is a different pace of life. This is a different way of living. And I'm embracing it and quite enjoying it.
I mean,
so it's really interesting.
The thing about this, like you were saying, I hadn't even considered that, how tall you might be. Because you're not, when you're in the presence of somebody, if somebody is really tall and somebody is a bit, perhaps overbearing, you might feel a little bit intimidated by them. But I think in these virtual exchanges, that intimidation potential or nervousness is lessened, because I'm in my home, you're in your home, and we're both comfortable in our environment, and it's kind of more intimate in some ways, even though we're not in the flesh with each other. Like, there's a real intimacy, and I said it earlier about the F22 group. You feel like you're on a much more of a level playing field, and people have been having meetings with like CEOs of companies out of their kitchen, and the kids are running around and stuff, and suddenly you see the real in people, I think, when in this situation.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the level playing field you just mentioned is really interesting, because I think we're so used to like judging spontaneously without even knowing that we're judging people.
Yeah.
It's just I think it's a natural human reaction. You don't really think about it, but you've got a picture of somebody the moment you meet them. And now we're kind of seeing, and it's really interesting to see people in their homes. Like, I know when I watch the news and you're seeing the reporters speaking from their homes, it's now become commonplace. That was kind of unheard of a few months ago.
Yeah.
And it's far more acceptable now that people are working from home. Like, I work from my home. I've got a little office at the front of the house, and my son works in the dining room, which has now been converted into his office and gym. And now that's become norm now. It's become the norm. He's become my co-worker.
Yeah.
And I think we're learning to live in a different world, which is becoming acceptable, and that this virus, which is, invisible to us, has changed our world, and we've got to work with it.
Yeah.
And embrace it. Whatever happens, life goes on, and we have to enjoy what we're doing. Life is it's not forever, and that's what I'm learning as my years are moving on. I always thought that life was forever, and I had time to do whatever I wanted, but I'm realising that there is a finite amount of time. And it's kind of made me want to hurry to get on with all those things I want to do.
Yeah, and you definitely seem to seize the moment as well. I mean, there's a few things I just want to sort of reflect upon. You mentioned earlier about pausing and flow, and you started talking a language that I'm very familiar with. But there is something very powerful about the pause in conversation, and then that flow as well. And I think, we've been living a pause through lockdown, which has enabled some of us, maybe not all of us, I know for sure, I've said before, but we're privileged in that we've been able to do some work. We haven't been affected by the pandemic directly. And it's been a bizarre time, but we definitely enjoyed the pause of nature. Kind of, well, the pause of the pandemic globally meant that we were really outdoors a lot, enjoying nature and enjoying the birds and enjoying the beautiful spring weather, which we're not really enjoying a beautiful summer now. But luckily, it came at the right time.
Yeah.
And I think it was a really powerful time, actually. But you are a very fast-paced person. So in terms of pause, like you say, it's great to think about the pause in language, because there is a lot that happens in that pause. When you're giving a presentation or when you're in a coaching situation, it's important to let people be silent for a few moments, to let those words go in, for let them to think about it, and then for them to speak when they're ready. And in the same way that when you're giving maybe a talk, let it go in, and then we can move on. Let them reflect upon it. How does it make them feel? But yeah, so thinking about your fast-paced way of living, because I can tell that you're fast-paced, because like you say, you talk fast and you've got all these things going on. You're seizing the moment. You're a pioneer. What do you do to take care of your own well-being?
Well, this is going to sound crazy now, because if we're talking about fast pace, what do I do kind of to maybe relax and unwind? I do go running, and I know you're a runner as well, Helen. So I do like running, because I think that puts me in like a meditative state, and I love running in nature. I love running in the woodlands and just connecting with the world and running through the different seasons. And I think even though I'm kind of going fast, and my mind has actually stopped and slowed down, and I think that is such a wonderful way of being and connecting. But also you're in that rhythm of breathing. You can't run. I can't really talk when I'm running. I know other people can, but I tend to get into a rhythm of breathing, and it's like that rhythmical breathing, which
Yeah.
puts me into a meditative state. And I think what I've learned also is, as you mentioned, connecting with nature, that during the lockdown period, I've now beginning to love my garden. I've grown a momentous or monumentous tomato plant, which has grown like a couple of feet in a week. No exaggerating, it must be my words of wisdom or something, but for some reason it's gone crazy. But I'm learning to kind of grow things, watch the birds, and also to stop in the moment and watch, because I think when we all went into lockdown, we just noticed that nature just continued. The birds were still singing, the birds were hatching, and life was just going on. Everything was, in that lovely period of springtime. And I think what I've learned is that life has got its own rhythm that we can connect to, and we can't really force things to happen that aren't supposed to. There are things that I've kind of pined for, and I've actually accepted that they're not going to happen for now, but you've got to wait for the time to come, because nature has its own plan. And I think, although I kind of have this hurry, 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 I think I do realise that, life has got its own rhythm. We have to abide by that and respect it as well.
And do you think that became more apparent to you during lockdown?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Like, I've got a poster in my bedroom that I ordered online about birds. And it's a lovely illustration of birds. And I never thought I would have the time to actually study the birds and watch how wonderful, how fascinating nature is, that we can produce all these beautiful creatures and flowers that are just living in harmony. And I don't know, I think it has changed. It slowed me down an awful lot. If you think I'm fast now, I was much faster before. So it has slowed me down. It slowed me down to appreciate things and to think, let's just enjoy things and let's not force them, because we live in a beautiful world if we want to see it. If you look far enough, you can see all the beauty in it.
Yeah,
So,
that's
that's what
lovely.
I've learned. That's what I've kind of learned. And also the people, what I've learned is how important my friends and family are.
Yeah.
Throughout my kind of career, I've had some really very, very supportive friends who, if they hadn't said the right things to me at the right time, it probably wouldn't have encouraged me to kind of leave my business, move on with a career, kind of embrace other things. I kind of listen to those important people in my life, and listen to my intuition as well. I think you've got to follow your intuition. I think for a long time I didn't know I had intuition. I think in my early 20s, when I was kind of getting married and having children, I don't think I was really in touch with that intuition. And I think now, 40 years later, or so, not quite as much as that makes me sound very old, but all those years later, I think what I've learned is that we do have that kind of inner compass that we have to listen to, and we have to kind of believe it. We can easily be sidetracked by listening to others. Or I think also what I've learned is that those consumerism and all those material possessions I've learned as I've got older are absolutely meaningless.
Mm.
And I don't really need any of those material possessions. You know, I don't really pine for anything. I don't think I ever have done, but I've just realised that I'm just content to be healthy and to have my children are all now grown up and leaving home. A couple of them are in their 30s, and the youngest is 27. So I just think I'm really proud to kind of think how nice that I can enjoy them as adults, because it was a real struggle to bring them up as little ones, and they've kind of come through and emerged relatively sane adults, I hope.
Yeah.
But I think it's nice to just kind of embrace, and I don't ever allow myself the time to kind of reflect. Now you've given me this opportunity to kind of reflect, and also I did one of your wonderful yoga classes not so long ago when I was in the garden.
Thank you.
One evening, and that was absolutely beautiful. I thought I was connecting with you, with the breath, with nature, and that really kind of made me think I'm just really content in my back garden looking up at the sky, realizing that just to be healthy and well and to have healthy and happy children is kind of, what more can you ask for?
Yeah, I mean,
everything else is just everything else is our life to create an income for us to be able to enjoy our lives, so to speak.
yeah, you need those little glimpses every so often
Yeah,
to remind yourself
sure.
that you're okay and that you're connected and that,
Yeah, for sure,
you know,
for sure. It's true, and I think it's really a nice opportunity that you've given me this opportunity to kind of speak and to verbalise it, because I never actually talk about it very much. So thank you.
oh, thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
What I was just going to say, you know, moving forward in terms of the toucan agency and photography, are you hoping to get back on the cruise ships again?
I was actually commissioned to go on the Queen Mary on the
Oh,
last
wow.
week of August. That was a commission that came in last year, and that was to be flown to New York and come back on the Queen Mary
Mm-hmm.
back to Southampton. That was a 6-day crossing. And unfortunately, that has been cancelled. I'm hoping for some more of that to come next year. But I have got 2 more cruises coming up. One in November, that is kind of a river cruise, and then one again in the Canary Islands in January. So let's see what happens. We don't know how the cruise world is going to go, but
Yeah.
we're prepared for those now.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, you've definitely got a lot of things going on to keep you busy.
Yes, I have. I love to be busy, and I love to kind of be occupied even when I'm not working. My daughter moved into a new house last week, and I was reveling in the fact that I was assembling her IKEA furniture. That is a lovely pastime I enjoy, putting furniture together. So if I'm not cooking or kind of baking, which is another skill I enjoy, I like kind of assembling things and being busy. So,
Nice. Okay, Stella. So I think we're going to wrap it up there.
yeah,
Unless there's
sure.
anything else that you want to share.
No, I think I've shared an awful lot. I've shared more than I thought I would. You've managed to kind of coax so much out of me, Helen. You're very good at this.
You're a very sharing person, and you're a very focused and you know, passionate and driven
Thank
person.
you.
And yeah,
Thank you.
it's been lovely to have this conversation with you, and I look forward to connecting with you again soon.
Thank you, Helen.
All
I really
right.
enjoyed it.
Thanks, Stella.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation. It was fast paced. We covered so much in there, but I will leave all the links to the websites, Stella's social media handles as well. That will sort of all be updated into the show notes, so you can keep a check in with that. So this is the final episode of this current season. I'm going to call them seasons. This one was season 2. So I just want to thank everyone who's joined me so far for these conversations. It's meant so much to me. I've really enjoyed hosting them, and I've felt really inspired. Various ideas, thoughts, collaborations have arisen. So I just want to thank everyone who's joined me so far for these conversations. Hoping to launch season 2 perhaps in September, so look out for that. I'd love to hear from you, whether you want to reach out via YouTube or via my social media handles, or you could sign up to my mailing list if you go to helenroscoe.com. I'm going to be taking a break over August, so I'm actually not teaching any live classes, but I might do some pre-recorded stuff for the YouTube channel if you want to take any yoga sessions with me. There's a whole host of yoga practices on there that you can do. And also you can catch up with some of the wellbeing sessions as well. So there's 5 other conversations as well as tonight's conversation with Stella. And they're all varied. There's lots of different things to sort of, keep you inspired or intrigued. But yeah, other than that, I just want to say thanks for tuning in. Thanks for your support. And I look forward to touching base with you again soon. Okay, bye.